Neurodivergent Minds, the podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our second season of Neurodivergent Moms. This is our first season in English. And today, to celebrate our first episode, we have with us Berta from BeeUtiful Minds. Hi, Berta.
Hi, Sabrina. Thanks so much. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you so much for accepting this interview. I'm really looking forward to it. So, for those who doesn't know you, could you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about, what you do and everything?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Berta. I'm director and owner of BeeUtiful Minds. It's a newly set up company that has the main aim to support families who have neurodivergent members or who think they might have neurodivergent members. Myself, I'm a psychologist by education. I loved psychology when I was a teenager, went to study it, but afterwards, because of economical circumstances, I ended up in the corporate life where I worked for a few years. And then I had my family, and I thought there I was ready to embrace family life. Everything is going to go smoothly. I've learned about this. Nothing could have been further away from the truth. So I had my kids, and as I was tackling work-life balance, I realized that corporate life is nothing to do with who I was as a new mom. And I went back to my first love, and I opened a business in childcare. So I kind of returned to a bit more psychology-related field. My kids were growing up. We were having a few challenges here and there. In the meantime, I kind of grew the business in childcare. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I realized I really started to believe in my gut and know that there was something very different about my son initially. And that's when I started looking into the neurodivergence. And it started with him being diagnosed as gifted. Everyone told me he's just gifted. That's how kids are. He's going to grow out of the different difficulties we were having. Then COVID hit. Everything was fine. And as we were coming out of COVID, things started going to the worse. And that's when I kind of fully delved into the whole neurodivergent movement. So I started frantically learning, reading everything about it. And long story short, in the last 2 years, my son was diagnosed as twice exceptional, maybe thrice exceptional. My husband got his diagnosis as an adult. We're currently going through assessments with my daughter. I'm always kind of, depending on the day, I identify myself or not. So that's a chat still to be had. And in the same time, I do think I've accumulated a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, and I've decided to put this to a different use as well. And I created BeeUtiful Minds. So it's the new kind of branch of our business, and it's really focusing on supporting families who have neurodivergent members. So we have services for children, supporting children, and we also have training and support programs for parents. And just to end the introduction on focusing a bit on the future plans, we're actually in process of acquiring a farm. So we're hoping this will be the hub for BeeUtiful Minds, where we're going to be able to offer kind of equine therapy, animal therapy, and just have a place for families where they can go, where, you know, the sensory needs are met, the social needs are met, and just where we can all be ourselves and kind of rely on each other and build a community that's based on acceptance and love. To sound a bit of cliche, but that's the vision.
That's lovely. And nature, as you said, I mean, it's so important, right, for
Yeah.
neurodivergent people because we we can get a lot from nature and the calm and everything, sensory wise, we regulate ourselves a lot
Yeah.
in nature.
Yeah, I do. I think it's very important that I don't think we have enough outlets where we can actually do that in a way that's comfortable.
Yeah.
Because obviously, we can go into the parks and we can go on the mountains, but sometimes that can be a little bit challenging especially for younger kids because of the unknown.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to create an environment that is outdoorsy, that has the animals, that has the plants, and in the same time, it's somehow controlled and predictable. Predictable
Hmm.
might be a better word than controlled.
Yeah, definitely. So you're quite busy.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So, Berta, there were many, thank you for your interaction, first of all. And there were many terms that you were just, saying there. And I would like to just go through it like each one by one because
Yeah.
we were talking before we were before the recording, we were talking about how autism, it's like really the word that we hear more often, and then whether giftedness or ADHD or exceptionality, those are like terms that maybe they're not quite familiar for people. So from your perspective as a psychologist,
Yeah.
could you tell us a little bit about what is neurodivergent?
Yeah, so the neurodivergent term was and again, like this is information that I've gathered from different sites, and I know, like, it's not, I wouldn't say it's an academic answer,
Yeah.
but the neurodivergent umbrella is basically it came to cover a wider ways of explaining people who have a different way of maybe thinking and feeling. I
Hmm.
love the term differently wired. It's about,
Yeah.
the way that some or a part of a population feel things in a more intense way, or maybe sometimes less intense than the majority.
Hmm.
For a very long time, mental illness and what we include, like even now, a lot of this kind of conditions are considered medical. And, we talk about symptoms and we
Yeah.
talk about it being diagnosed.
Hmm.
But the reality that I believe in is that in the same way as we have different people with different color skins, we have different ways of our brain functioning.
Definitely.
And this different way of brain functioning is under the umbrella of neurodivergence. That's the explanation for me, and I do believe that this concept comes to tackle a bit the conception that there is something wrong with this population. There's nothing wrong. There's different, in the same way as, in the animal field we have different species.
Yeah.
As humans, we have different brains, and having this diversity has helped the human race evolve even,
Hmm.
over time. And there's a lot to say on this subject. Like one of the workshops that we're doing, and we talk to parents over, why do we talk about such a wide range of terms under this umbrella. And we talk about giftedness, and we talk about autism, and we talk about ADHD, but we can also talk about anxiety or depression or bipolar conditions, and all that.
Hmm.
And one of my opinions is that a lot of these have basically a common root, and that is the way people feel the environment, and
Yeah.
whether that's physical feeling, and we're talking about, the intensity of the noise, or the taste, or the touch, or it's an emotional feeling of how we perceive communication, how we communicate, and all of that. So the way that our body interprets the outdoor or the outside of the body or inside of the body signals. It's what's different, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a difference. And then obviously each of the terms that we use can refer to a difference in a specific way.
Definitely. Yeah, I cannot agree more. Like, I think I was listening, I don't recall the name. I was listening to a doctor the other day talking about neurodivergence, and he was saying that eventually in 10 years maybe we won't even talk about autism or ADHD or giftedness anymore, that we would just use that term, because as you said, it's all about the wiring, right? Like, our brains are wired differently, and just we need to accept that and embrace it, actually. So
Exactly.
yeah.
And I do think we're in a kind of in a crucial point of like, as a society, where we do start interpreting this different, and we start looking at this different wiring among people, and accept it and learn more about it. And it's great. Like, I do think it's absolutely fantastic that we're doing this, and I'm very excited about what the next 5 to 10 years will bring to this field.
Yeah, especially because, as we were talking about earlier, like, for example, myself, I got my assessment a year ago, and I got a very late diagnosis, and there's a lot of trauma there, in terms of my childhood and my upbringing. So, and it's not the only, like, it's not just me. Like, I know many adults that got diagnosed very late, and it's always related to the diagnosis of your children, right? Like, you get there, well, you said it yourself, your husband, right? It was the same for me. So, and there is so much pain there, that we never spoke out, and it's just because of that, because we had to learn our way through, right? And the amount of masking I've done, and the way you lose yourself and you don't know who you are anymore, because you're trying to suppress everything within,
And
like.
I think, even the not understanding of the difference,
Yes.
of blaming, the blame and the shame that usually comes with not understanding why things are either harder or more difficult for yourself, is it what creates a lot of trauma. And I think we're going a little bit into a spiral, because, like, autistic or neurodivergent people feel things differently, and they try to suppress that, which doesn't always work well. That creates that shame and blame, which leads to meltdown, which ultimately leads to the image of not the autism or the neurodivergence, but of the burnout of the meltdowns and of the trauma. So then we end up confusing the trauma of the events with the different wiring. And that's where, a lot of the misconceptions and the myths about the different neurodivergencies come into play.
Yeah, definitely. And then we had to add that normally when there is a neurodivergent child, there is a neurodivergent mom or dad. So when your son or daughter gets into burnout, then you get into burnout yourself. And it's so difficult to cope with that situation when you are also dysregulated yourself, right? Because, like, and there is so much shame and so much guilt as a parent, right? Because like, you also need to go through your like, normally, when you are working in a corporate or something like that, as you were saying, there's not much accommodation for a neurodivergent adult in the workplace. Like, there's no. So you spend at least 8 hours a day, right, trying to pretend that you can manage with a meeting after a meeting, you can manage with all the emails and phone calls and the sounds of the office and the smells, everything. and then you get home, and then your child is having a meltdown, and it's all a mess, and
Yeah.
you feel so
Yeah.
guilty because,
Yeah.
there's no way you can go through it. Like, it's so difficult,
Yeah.
right?
And a lot of times in families, you see that there are contradictory needs. Like one child might need extra pressure, and the other one doesn't stand to be touched. Like I always laugh in our family, there are two of us who really like who are touchy feely, and they love hugs, and they love to kind of hold hands and all that, and two of us who really don't like that. So it's an interesting dynamic. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
There's a lot of layers to this,
there
and
is.
to your point, like I do think a lot of the services and a lot of even the conceptions address either kids or parents. There's very few that address the family as a unit.
Yeah.
And I think looking into kind of, supporting the family, we need to look at the unit as itself and the dynamic between the members. It's not enough to put the child through therapy of any sort. It's not enough for the parent to do it. It's important to look at what's happening as a whole and to support all of them. Like a child will never be okay if the parent is going through a burnout, if the parent is dysregulated. And parents as adults probably have the responsibility ultimately to get themselves into a better place to be able to support the younger members.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. And then, well, going back to the terms, we also mention twice exceptionality.
Yeah.
So if you could tell us a little bit about that, because I feel like, we really need more information about that. Sometimes we feel like, oh no, if you're autistic, you cannot be gifted, or if you are gifted and autistic, you cannot be ADHD, right? And sometimes it could be the three of them,
Yeah.
right?
Well, this definitely, has a lot of historic roots, and it's not been long ago. Like, you weren't diagnosed as autistic and ADHD, whereas now we have the term ODHD.
Yeah.
And the same with, autistics for a long time were considered of having a lower intellect, which could not be further away from the truth. So yeah, historically there were a lot of misconceptions. But coming to your question, twice exceptionality is a term that's used for a person who has two different neurodivergencies, to call them like that. And then I've heard in different places thrice exceptional. So I think the important thing is to have the concept behind it that this different wiring co-occur, and we can have different combinations of all sorts between them. And each of them has its own strengths and its own challenges as well. And like as I said, our journey first started with my son being identified as gifted. And again, we were talking a little bit before we started recording there. Like there's a lot to be said about the label of gifted. And in a lot of societies, it's one of those labels that you don't want to talk loud about because it almost feels like bragging. But it's definitely not bragging for someone who understands the whole notion of it. And like with every single different wiring, or even with the normal wiring, everything comes with pros and cons, with strengths and challenges. And gifted is nowhere to be it's no different. One of the things that I've learned along the journey is for gifted people, but also probably for autistics, boredom can be felt as pain. As a very busy mom, I often say, God, I just miss being bored. But my kids always contradict me. No, boredom hurts. Like the moment I'm bored, like, and it's actually a punishment. So it's a part that's very hard to get your head around if you don't have someone to really explain it to you. But it is, and it's the way they perceive the lack of activity. So yeah, it is a blessing, and it can be a curse, and everything in between as well. So yeah, I think that's why it's important to understand the concept of twice exceptionality, just to kind of understand the fact that things are not unidimensional. There are very many dimensions, there are very many complexities.
Yeah.
And learning about them help our kids understand better and understand themselves better.
Definitely, yes. So I also wanted to talk about parenting neurodivergent children as a neurodivergent parent. And I think, you are the expert on this. You are supporting families. You also
I don't
do
think
it on
there is
daily
anyone
basis.
who's an expert on this.
Well,
I don't think there are experts in the field, but yeah, I'll try to give you my perspective. I wouldn't say it's an expert perspective, but yeah.
what do you think is the biggest challenge when parenting neurodivergent children?
Well, I think whether you're a neurodivergent parent or not, I think the biggest challenge is understanding that the little person you have is a person in their own right, and that the way you see the reality is different from the way they interpret it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we grew up with the conception that the adult knows best, the adult knows more.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're learning now from our children is that it's the complete opposite. So then there is this internal fight of, do I know best? Do I trust my own instinct, or do I trust what my child is telling me?
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's different. And the most simple example, it has to do with temperature. How many times do we not overdress babies and they cry and you see that they're uncomfortable, but we're like, oh no, it's cold outside. And the way we perceive temperature can be completely different than how our kids perceive temperature.
Mm-hmm.
And from something as small as that, we can understand that we do that every single time, several times a day. So we need to kind of take a step back and kind of analyze and give our children the chance to trust their own, to understand what they're feeling, to see if they know what they're feeling, understand what they're feeling, and then to listen and to believe their reality.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest challenge as a parent, to really believe that your reality might not be your child's, and once you understand this, to respect their reality. And it comes with a whole lot of other smaller challenges.
Definitely. It is very energy consuming, right?
And it's also energy giving. Like I think and again, like I do think we place a big emphasis on the challenges we have, but I also think there are the same, if not more, there is more beauty in this journey. And even the journey of self-discovery, like I've learned more about myself while being a mother than in any other way. The same goes for my husband from a diagnosed, neurodivergent perspective. And every single parent I've ever talked to who has been there, they've been on a learning curve. And it's not only learning by going through challenges, it's also learning by going into a world and having your eyes open to things that you never realized that exist.
Well,
And
actually, I cannot agree more, because as I was saying, I had a very, well, now I realize why, but I had a very difficult upbringing in terms of, well, it's related to my neurodivergency, but through my children, like I was reading your introduction, the one that you sent me, and saying that the fact, when you become a mom, it's like you start over, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, that connection, it's like, children puts a mirror in front of you,
Yeah.
right? And they really force you to look through it.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Like, it is a whole journey. And actually, right now, I can say they save me, and they
Yeah.
save me every day. Sometimes I don't even know
Yeah.
I don't even know what is going on with myself. And
Yeah.
they are so connected to themselves, and
Yeah.
they're so creative because of their
Yeah.
neurodivergence and everything. And sometimes, they help me see myself in all of this, and it's amazing. Like, I
Yeah.
think that what you were saying, we live in a society where we are taught, well, no, now it's changing, but we are taught, like, adults are here and children should obey, and and they should look up and learn from
Yeah.
the adults all the time, whether we need to learn from each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is really, really important to
Yeah.
change our minds on that.
Yeah. Like one of my favorite short kind of mantras is, and I have a t-shirt with it and I absolutely love it. It is connection, not compliance.
Yes.
We don't live in a society, and maybe in the past, like historically, again, there were times when compliance was so much needed, but that
Mm-hmm.
was hundreds of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now we live in a society where thankfully we can build connections instead of compliance. And it's beautiful to see children, and I'm not referring only to my kids, but again, professionally, I see a lot of children who are raised to believe in themselves, to hope in a better world, and to hope that they can make a difference.
Yeah.
That, who are perseverant, who are not afraid to say nicely to an adult, no, I don't want it this way, or this is how I'd like to do things. And I think there is so much more good in this than bad
Yeah.
things. So yeah, it's a good time. Like, I don't want to be overly optimistic, because I'm not usually overly optimistic, but I do see a lot of good changes that are happening.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of challenges, but look, there's no way, like, it's not ever black and white.
No, it's not. Definitely. If all of this had taught me something, is that,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
there's no only black and white. There is a whole lots of grays, and right?
Much more than 50, yeah.
Yeah,
Different
definitely.
shades, yeah. No, absolutely.
I wanted to talk a little bit about, I don't know if you're familiarized with sensory integration.
Yeah, a little bit, yes.
Yeah. I don't know here, but in Spain, this field is growing a lot. So normally, we get our sensory profiles done, and it gives us a lot of information, as you were explaining, from the
Yeah,
our interoceptive system, system. So the examples you were saying about, temperature, and for example, in my house, in terms of the shower time, it's quite challenging because it's very sensory. So whether one of my children prefer very hot water or very cold water, because
yeah.
they're sensory seekers, the other one prefers like very mild. So
Mhm.
for us as a family, and for me as a professional, it gave me like a whole new, side of it, and it helps me a lot to get a lot of information and to take care of myself and take care of my children. So paying attention to that can really be life-changing. So
Yeah.
what do you think about that and these sensory profiles? What is your opinion?
I don't think they're so common in Ireland. Like, I
Mhm.
haven't heard, and I'd love to see, like, as a document, how it looks like and the kind of information it provides. I personally haven't seen any. I know that in each of the assessments that I've seen, there is a sensory profile, in the sense that, they describe the different, again, very focused on challenges, the challenges that a person would have.
Yeah.
um my daughter went through an OT assessment that was actually, it was a great report that we've read. And again, I've learned a lot about her proprioceptive system, and found out with surprise that she's dyspraxic. I knew she had some challenges, didn't realize how, that, again, a lesson for me to really believe her when she said this hurts, not to think, well, you'll get over it. So I don't know a lot about the profile themselves, but I do know how important it is that we pay attention to even the small things, and again, that we believe the reality of the person who tells it. And I think this is where a lot of, like you and me both work in childcare environments, and we know how important it is as an educator, and I have these chats all the time with my team, to really believe the child when he is saying that he's hungry, that he's not hungry, to validate that.
Yeah.
Even if we don't agree that there is what we think is objective reason for them to feel away, but to validate that, and to really give them to really tell them that we believe and that we understand them.
Yeah.
And that's how they get to know their bodies. And it's also important, I think, as parents, as educators, to understand that we're all on different timelines, and we cannot rush different sensory things, like and different ways the body is developing. So I don't know if this answers to your question. I might not. This is a field that I'm constantly learning about. But one of the things we always do is just highlight to the parents how important it is to validate and to believe, and to tell the kids that they believe their reality, and to also be mindful of their own needs.
Yeah.
And it might seem trivial, but it's so important to eat something when you're hungry, and not to famish yourself and then ask yourself, why are you irritable? Well, yeah, because you were supposed to eat a few hours ago.
Yeah.
And it's just, these are things that we can control. These are things that we can do. So let's do all of these, and then the bigger stuff will be just a tad easier.
Yeah, definitely. It's very funny that you mentioned that about eating, because sometimes, like sometimes, for example, my son, he doesn't he's not very aware of his interoceptive system. So sometimes I'm trying to teach him to, I use the idea of putting like as scan your body like an X-ray.
Yeah.
So just how are my eyes, my mouth, my tummy, like everything, even going to toilet. Sometimes they don't realize they need to go to toilet, and they realize once they're bursting, right?
Yeah.
And it's with everything. And it's very nice that you are mentioning about children need to be heard. And sometimes, we're trying to rush them through, or you need to wear this t-shirt, you need to put on your jacket, and maybe there's a little tiny thing, a stitch or something that it's out, and for them it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And they're really, sometimes it can be like, they are really in pain about that.
Yeah.
It's about labels on the clothes, even the hair. For me, like, I don't like people touching my hair. Going to the hairdresser, for me, it's like the biggest nightmare ever. So sometimes, we are combing our daughter's hair or son's hair. We need to be really mindful about those things. And sometimes they can, you're like, oh no, you're just being, fussy or whatever about it, and they're not. They're actually, they need to be heard.
And a lot of times they don't know, and there's a lot to be said. Like, they might not know what's bothering them, but playing the detective and putting us the detective and teaching them to be curious about, why is this hard for me? What could make it better? Is it too tight? Is it too loose? Is it the number of layers? Maybe we need to get a lighter jacket that is not so puffy. Maybe we need a puffier jacket and just have one layer under. Like there's a lot that can be explored, and we do so many things for our kids. I think it's important to be honest with ourselves and to make sure that when we do something for our kids, we do it for the child, and because the child wants it, not because we think it's the right way and the right thing. And it's the same with the toys. Like we buy so many toys, so many games, and some are so loud and some are so fancy, and the child plays with the box, and there's a lot of truth in that story. And then we're disappointed, and then the child feels shame. So it's about going back to us and parenting the child we have, not the one that we thought we might have.
Yeah, that's a very, very good one. That's a very good one. Yeah, parenting the child that we have. Yeah. There's now that you've mentioned that, I know there's a lot of shame in this as a parent, but there is a grief there, right? A grief that you go through when you receive, I don't know if it happens to you when you receive that diagnosis or that assessment. It happened to me as a mom, and also for myself, like, the life I could have had if I, had known before, or even for my children, like, when you receive that assessment, I don't know if, it happened to you, but you go through kind of a grief, like, and, and you think like, am I going to be enough for them? Am I going to be able to help them, to, to be there for them as much as they need in terms of, their differences, and also, the pros and cons, right? So that's what you were saying. So I don't know if you've been through that yourself as a mom. That
I could say I've been through grief, but I do think that happened because for us, the diagnosis came quite late in the process. And by the time we got the diagnosis, we knew, and I knew quite a lot of, I knew a lot about the strengths that my child has and the challenges, obviously. But I think I was glad when I got the diagnosis, because it came as a confirmation. Okay, this is what it is. It's not medical. It's I was lucky because I've had a good understanding of what autism means, and we were already on a good path. I think a lot of the grief comes when you are blindsided, and when you're faced with a lot of the assessments that you get, which are a lot of the times very negative. We were very lucky, and we've had great professionals who redirected, and even the challenges, they presented them in a way that I knew they are manageable. Whereas I've seen some reports and some assessments done by different professionals, and I was like, oh my God, if I received that as a parent, I would have been devastated.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm hoping to do with the parents I have around me is just to kind of fill in those gaps, and to constantly say, it's not a bad thing. The society sometimes makes it a bad thing.
Yeah.
But if we work, and in today's day, we can help these kids have an amazing life.
Definitely.
And we need to focus on that. Like, this is not like you cannot compare being autistic with having a medical condition.
No, definitely.
It's not. And I don't want to minimize the challenges of a parent who has a non-speaking child, who has a lot of other co-occurring medical conditions.
Yeah.
We need to separate what's medical from what's a different way of being.
Yeah.
And when we do that, I don't think if we do that, we grieve the life we've had. I think if anything, it sends me into that, mom, I'm gonna change the world for him to make sure that he has, the life that he can have.
Yeah.
There is so much need of creativity and of a lot of the skills that all neurodivergent people have. So this might be a bit controversial, but that was kind of my journey. And again, it's just because I was very, very lucky with a lot of people who've been there ahead of me, and maybe they've protected me from the doom and gloom.
Yeah.
And not to say that, geez, we have a lot of challenges. Like, it's not about minimizing that. But again, I wouldn't compare it to a medical condition. For us and for our family, it's not.
Yeah. And just to, start to wrapping it up, because as we said, we're moms. We have our children waiting for us. This is kind of a tradition in my podcast. I've done it in the whole first season, but I always like to finish with a question. So that would be, what advice would you give to another neurodivergent mom or dad that you wish someone had given you, from your experience?
Okay, this is a good one. I'd say, I'll continue on the same line. It's not good, it's not bad. It is what it is. It's the journey that was given to you. It was the deck of cards that you've been dealt. Embrace the good as much as the challenges, and parent the child you have in a way that suits you as a parent. I really think we need to not forget about who we are as a parent. So it's about, I think that's what I would have liked to know a little bit earlier, to go back to, okay, getting myself into a good place. And once I am in a good place, I can be the mom that my child needs. And it took me a while to get myself in a good place. I think the part of acceptance is very important as a parent. And that's maybe a second advice, but I think it's very important. No matter how fantastic we are as parents, we cannot solve all the problems our kids have. And accepting that we can't do everything, or even if we do everything, it doesn't mean that their journey will be smooth. It's something I'm still working on. But I think it's part of it. And I don't think it's fair on our kids to put, the pressure of us wanting to solve everything for them. It's also their journey. It's not only ours.
I think those are very beautiful advices and very true. Sometimes we want to protect them from everything, but they're not ours to be protected. They are their own person, and they need to go through their own journey. And childhood is like a gym for them in order to practice everything, to be, to be ready for adulthood. And definitely. So.
Now, I'm great at giving advice. I'm not as good as following my own advice. So I would say that is a caveat. But I'm work in progress, like we all are.
Well, you cannot get it all, like good advices and be good at it, at following your own advices.
That's it.
At least you got one part of it.
Absolutely.
Well, Berta, could you, for those who would like to contact you or follow up on social media, could you let us know where we can find you?
So it's www.beeUtifulminds.ie, and beautiful, it's spelled BeeUtiful Minds. If you have in the show notes, I think it's best. And we have all our contact details, and we're on Instagram and on Facebook. We welcome new followers. And if anyone would, we're in North Dublin. Anyone who'd like to keep in touch with us for when our farm is open, we'd love to hear from all the community of neurodivergent families around.
That's lovely. I will add all that to the show notes, okay? For
Thank you
people
so
to-
much.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
worries.
And
Well,
thank you so much for the invite. It was really great talking to you, Sabrina.
thank you so much for accepting. It was lovely talking to you. And well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Neurodivergent Moms, the podcast.